Harrison Caldwell slammed his fist on the mahogany desk, causing the framed family photos to rattle. The Boston skyline outside his penthouse office witnessed many such outbursts over the years, but this one was different. The specialist from Johns Hopkins had just left, and Harrison was alone with news no amount of money could fix. 12 months, he muttered, the words bitter in his mouth. Perhaps less. His son Xavier, his only child and heir to the Caldwell empire, was dying. The cardiomyopathy that had plagued him since childhood had accelerated beyond medical intervention. The specialist had delivered the prognosis with clinical detachment. 1 year, give or take, before Xavier's heart would simply stop. Harrison pressed the intercom. Camille, my office. Now. Camille Thornton appeared within 30 seconds, tablet in hand, her silver hair immaculately styled as always. 20 years as Harrison's executive assistant had taught her to read his moods better than anyone. The specialist? She asked, though she already knew the answer from his expression. Useless, Harrison spat. Like all the others. They want to make him comfortable. As if comfort means anything when you're 26 and dying. Camille said nothing, waiting. In moments of crisis, Harrison Caldwell didn't need sympathy, he needed action. I failed him, Harrison continued, gazing at a photo of Xavier, thin, serious, with his mother's thoughtful eyes. All this, he gestured at the skyscraper bearing the Caldwell name. And for what? I built an empire he'll never inherit. There are still experimental treatments. We've tried them all. Every specialist, every trial, every procedure. Harrison's voice was flat now, the rage giving way to something worse, resignation. But that's not what keeps me up at night. He turned to face Boston Harbor below, where his fleet of cargo ships moved like toys in the distance. Xavier has never lived, Camille. He's never climbed a mountain or fallen in love or made a single decision that wasn't overshadowed by his condition or my expectations. Harrison's reflection in the glass looked suddenly older than his 62 years. I gave him everything except the chance to actually live. Camille had seen Harrison negotiate billion-dollar deals without breaking a sweat, but she'd never seen this expression, something between desperation and determination. What are you thinking? She asked cautiously. He needs to experience love. Real love, not the pity or obligation he'd get if people knew his situation. Harrison turned back to her. I want you to find someone. Someone. A woman. The right woman. Someone who will marry him. Make these last months meaningful. Camille blinked twice, the only indication of her shock. You want me to hire someone to marry Xavier? Not hire. Compensate. Generously. Harrison was already pacing, energized by the new focus. $5 million. Half up front, half after it's over. Harrison, you can't possibly. 10 million. And the beach house in Malibu. This isn't a business transaction. Everything's a business transaction. Harrison pulled up files on his screen. We need someone educated, compassionate, preferably with medical knowledge, given his condition. Someone who can give him real companionship. And you don't think she'll just be after the money? Of course she will be. But she'll earn it. Harrison's eyes narrowed. And if Xavier never knows about our arrangement, what difference does it make why she's there? The end result is the same. Camille set her tablet down. This is crossing a line, even for you. My son is dying. There are no lines. Harrison pulled up Xavier's schedule. He's finishing his treatment at Mass General tomorrow. We'll need backgrounds on candidates by Friday. Initial interviews can be discreet, research positions at the foundation, something plausible. And what happens when he falls for this woman? Only to discover it was all orchestrated by his father. Harrison's jaw tightened. He never finds out. That's your job, Camille. Absolute discretion. Select someone who understands what's at stake. And if I refuse to be part of this? Harrison looked genuinely surprised. You won't. You've known Xavier since he was a child. You've seen what his life has been. This is his one chance at happiness. Camille stared at her boss for a long moment, then picked up her tablet again. I'll need complete autonomy in the selection process. No interference. Of course. And Xavier's doctors will need to be consulted about physical considerations. Harrison waved a hand dismissively. Whatever is necessary. As Camille reached the door, Harrison called after her. Find someone extraordinary, Camille. Someone who can make him forget he's dying, even if it's just for a little while. Alone again, Harrison swirled aged scotch in a crystal tumbler, staring at his phone. He should call Xavier, should say something meaningful to his son while there was still time. Instead, he opened his email and began drafting the paperwork for the transfer of funds. It was what he'd always done, solve problems with money, even when the problem was a broken heart, in every sense of the word. Autumn Sinclair stared at the patient's chart, trying to focus despite having been on shift for nearly 14 hours. The fluorescent lights of Massachusetts General Hospital's research wing made everything look harsh and unnatural. She tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and squinted at the lab results. "You should go home," Dr. Levine said, passing her station. "Your shift ended 2 hours ago. Just finishing up these clinical trial analyses." Autumn replied without looking up. "The cardiopulmonary gene therapy trials will still be here tomorrow," he countered. "Your mother won't be." Autumn's shoulders tensed. Her mother hadn't truly been present for 3 years, not since her father hanged himself in their garage after losing everything. The woman who spent her days staring out windows in the small apartment they could barely afford was just a shell. "I'll be done in 30, she promised. When Dr. Levine disappeared down the corridor, Autumn discreetly switched screens. The file she'd been reviewing wasn't part of her assigned research. It belonged to one of Mass General's VIP patients, Xavier Caldwell, heir to the Caldwell shipping and technology fortune. Xavier's condition was deteriorating. Despite having access to the best healthcare money could buy, his heart was failing. She scrolled through his treatment history, years of specialists and experimental approaches, all paid for by his father, Harrison Caldwell. Harrison Caldwell. The name made her teeth clench. 3 years ago, her father had been a respected investment advisor with his own boutique firm. Then he made the mistake of crossing Harrison Caldwell during a hostile takeover. Within 6 months, her father's reputation was destroyed by planted stories of fraud, his clients poached, and their family savings wiped out in legal fees. Nathan Sinclair went from country club membership to unemployment in under a year. She remembered her father's words the last time she saw him alive. "Men like Caldwell don't just win, Autumn. They salt the earth so nothing ever grows again." The next morning, she found him in the garage. Her phone buzzed, interrupting her thoughts. A text from her roommate. "Your mom called here again." Sounded confused. "Damn it," Autumn muttered, quickly closing Xavier's file. She grabbed her bag and hurried toward the exit, nearly colliding with a nurse pushing a cart of supplies. "Sorry, Jenny," she said. "I wasn't looking." "No problem." "Oh, did you hear about the foundation position?" Autumn paused. "What position?" "The Caldwell Foundation. They're recruiting research specialists for some new cardiac initiative. Interviews start next week. Thought you might be interested, given your background in genetic therapies." Autumn was about to say she'd never worked for the Caldwells when something stopped her. She forced a casual smile. "Is there a posting somewhere?" "Check your email. HR sent it to everyone in cardio research." 20 minutes later, sitting on the subway toward Brighton, Autumn read through the posting. The Caldwell Foundation was seeking medical professionals with research experience to support high-level health initiatives. The compensation was eye-popping, even by Boston standards. At her stop, instead of heading straight home, Autumn walked to a small coffee shop with free Wi-Fi. She ordered a black coffee and opened her laptop. First, she researched everything she could find about Xavier Caldwell. Unlike his media-hungry father, Xavier rarely appeared in public. The few photos she found showed a thin, serious-looking young man with startling blue eyes. According to sparse social media, he had a degree in literature from Yale but no apparent career. His charitable foundation made significant anonymous donations to children's heart research. Next, she searched recent news about Harrison Caldwell. Most articles focused on his business ventures, but a Society column mentioned him canceling a keynote address due to family matters. Autumn was about to close her laptop when a notification appeared. An email from Camille Thornton, executive assistant to Harrison Caldwell, confirming receipt of Autumn's application to the foundation position. Autumn frowned. She hadn't applied. She opened the email to find her resume, an outdated version from the hospital database, attached to an application she never submitted. Someone had applied on her behalf. The final line of the email read, "Interview scheduled Friday, 2 p.m., Caldwell Tower." For a moment, Autumn felt exposed, as if someone had discovered her research into Xavier's file. Then she realized, this was standard recruitment. The hospital probably forwarded credentials of qualified candidates. On the train ride home, a plan began to form. The Caldwell Foundation would have access to family records, financial information, maybe even evidence of Harrison's business tactics. If she could get inside. At her apartment, Autumn found her mother sitting in darkness. "Mom, you need to turn on lights when it gets dark," she said gently, flipping switches. "Nathan always handled the lights," her mother replied vaguely. Autumn prepared a simple dinner, helped her mother eat, and administered her medication. When her mother finally drifted to sleep, Autumn returned to her laptop. She began systematically altering her digital footprint. She changed social media privacy settings, deleted old posts mentioning her father, and created a new email address. Next, she crafted a revised resume emphasizing her research credentials while downplaying her family background. By midnight, Autumn Reynolds existed online, same education and professional qualifications as Autumn Sinclair, but with no connection to Nathan Sinclair or his public disgrace. Staring at her father's photo on her nightstand, Autumn felt a chill of purpose. "Men like Caldwell salt the earth," she whispered, "but they never look for poison in what grows back." Friday, she would walk into Caldwell Tower, not as a victim's daughter seeking revenge, but as the perfect candidate for whatever the foundation needed. And if that position brought her closer to Xavier Caldwell, all the better. The son might be her best route to destroying the father. Sea spray carried on the wind across the manicured lawn of the Caldwell estate in Martha's Vineyard. White chairs arranged in perfect rows faced an arch of native flowers. Only 20 seats were filled, a surprisingly intimate gathering for one of America's wealthiest families. Autumn stood at the end of the makeshift aisle, a modest bouquet of blue hydrangeas in her trembling hands. The simple ivory dress she wore had been selected by Camille Thornton, along with everything else for this hastily arranged ceremony. 3 months. That's all it had taken from her first interview at Caldwell Tower to this moment. The string quartet began playing, and all eyes turned to her. Autumn forced herself to look only at Xavier, who waited beneath the floral arch. His tailored suit emphasized his lanky frame, and though his complexion was pallid, his blue eyes were clear and intense. She began walking, each step bringing her closer to the man she'd agreed to deceive. The son of the man who destroyed her family. Her interview had gone perfectly, too perfectly. Camille had seemed particularly interested in Autumn's experience with cardiac patients. When asked about her personal life, Autumn carefully constructed a narrative of independence, of ambition tempered by compassion. A week later, she was invited to a foundation event where she coincidentally met Xavier. Their conversation about Russian literature had seemed genuine. His invitation for coffee afterward had felt natural. How carefully it had all been orchestrated, she realized only later. The subsequent whirlwind romance was a masterpiece of manipulation. Camille arranged everything. Dinners at restaurants where they'd have privacy, weekends at Caldwell properties where staff were paid for discretion. Harrison Caldwell hovered at the edges, watching with calculating eyes as his son fell in love with the woman he'd essentially selected. What Harrison couldn't have anticipated was Xavier himself. Despite his privilege, Xavier possessed a gentle thoughtfulness that caught Autumn off guard. He spoke of books like they were old friends. He asked about her research with genuine interest. He never mentioned his illness, though she could see its effects in his careful movements, his occasional shortness of breath. Now, reaching the altar, Autumn met his gaze. For a moment, doubt clouded her resolve. There was no triumph in deceiving this man. "You look beautiful," Xavier whispered as she took her place beside him. The justice of the peace began the ceremony. Autumn moved through it mechanically, repeating words that should have meant something. When they exchanged rings, his grandfather's band for him, a stunning sapphire for her, she felt the weight of her deception like a stone in her throat. "I now pronounce you husband and wife." Xavier's kiss was gentle, almost reverent. Applause scattered across the small gathering. At the reception in the estate's glass-walled pavilion overlooking the Atlantic, Harrison approached with 2 champagne flutes. He handed one to each of them. "To new beginnings," he said, his gaze lingering on Autumn. She took a sip, maintaining eye contact. Did he suspect her true identity? The background check had been thorough, but she'd been careful. Her mother was safely relocated to a care facility under her maiden name. Records of Nathan Sinclair's connection to Caldwell Industries were buried beneath sealed settlements. If you'll excuse me, Autumn said. I need a moment. In the lavish bathroom, she pressed her forehead against cool marble and breathed deeply. The plan had been simple. Gain access to the Caldwell inner circle, find evidence of Harrison's illegal business practices, then expose him. The marriage was supposed to be just a means to an end. She hadn't counted on Xavier's genuine affection, or the guilt that now threatened to consume her. The bathroom door opened. Camille Thornton entered, elegant in navy silk. Overwhelmed, Camille asked, applying fresh lipstick beside her. Just taking a breath. You've made him very happy, Camille said, her eyes meeting Autumn's in the mirror. That's all that matters to Harrison. And what about what matters to Xavier? Camille's expression softened. That's why you're here. Harrison believes you're what matters to Xavier now. Before Autumn could respond, the door opened again. A young woman entered, one of Xavier's cousins from Chicago. Autumn returned to the reception, where Xavier was engaged in conversation with an elderly man. Seeing her approach, Xavier's face lit up. There you are, he said, taking her hand. Uncle Robert was just telling me about his sailing adventures. The uncle excused himself, leaving them alone at the edge of the dance floor. Are you happy? Xavier asked quietly. The question caught her off guard. Of course. Because this all happened so fast. I'd understand if you were having second thoughts. Autumn studied his face, the sincerity in his eyes, the vulnerability. She had researched him extensively, knew about his heart condition, even had access to his medical records. Yet the files hadn't captured this, his awareness, his consideration. No second thoughts, she lied. Xavier nodded, then glanced across the room to where his father was checking his watch. I have something to tell everyone. Will you stand with me? They crossed to the small stage where the jazz quartet played. Xavier tapped a spoon against his water glass until the room quieted. Thank you all for coming today, he began. Your presence means everything to us. His hand found Autumn's, squeezing gently. As some of you know, my health has always been complicated. A few uncomfortable glances exchanged among the guests. Recently, I received news that my complications are becoming more serious. Autumn felt Harrison stiffen across the room. This clearly wasn't planned. Traditionally, people facing mortality are told to get their affairs in order, Xavier continued. But I've decided on a different approach. He turned to Autumn, his eyes bright with something she couldn't quite name. I don't want to spend my remaining time getting my affairs in order. I want disorder, adventure, experience. His smile widened. My beautiful new wife has agreed to join me on what I'm calling my living list. Not a bucket list of things to do before I die, but a list of ways to truly live while I can. Murmurs rippled through the small crowd. Harrison's face had gone rigid. So instead of a traditional honeymoon, we'll be embarking on a series of adventures. Xavier raised his glass. To living fully, however long we have. As glasses rose around the room, Autumn saw something unexpected in Xavier's expression. Not resignation or fear, but defiance. In that moment, she realized the complexity of her situation had just multiplied. She had married Xavier to get close to Harrison, but Xavier had married her for reasons of his own, reasons that might complicate her plans for revenge, and reasons that might make it impossible to keep her heart safely detached from the man she had promised to love, honor, and ultimately betray. You can open your eyes now, Xavier said. Autumn reluctantly lifted her hands from her face. Spread before them was the Grand Canyon at sunrise, vast and painted in impossible hues of orange and red. They stood on a private viewing platform, completely alone except for the helicopter pilot who had brought them here before dawn. Worth waking up at 4 a.m.? Xavier asked, his breath visible in the crisp morning air. She nodded, genuinely awestruck. I've never seen anything like it. Neither have I, he admitted. I've spent my life looking at pictures of places like this, but never actually standing in them. That was the pattern of their first month of marriage. Xavier had systematically planned experiences he'd always been denied due to his health or his father's protection. They went skydiving with specialized medical support on standby. They spent 3 days camping in the Utah desert, tracking stars across unpolluted skies. They took cooking classes in New Orleans and danced until dawn in a tiny Nashville bar where nobody recognized the Caldwell name. Xavier called it his living list. Autumn called it exhausting, exhilarating, and increasingly problematic for her original plan. With every adventure, Every quiet conversation under strange skies. Her walls weakened. The man she'd married as a means to revenge was becoming real to her. Complex, thoughtful, and far more than just Harrison Caldwell's son. Penny for your thoughts? Xavier said now, interrupting her reflection. Just taking it all in, she replied. He studied her face with that penetrating gaze that sometimes made her wonder if he could see right through her facade. You know, most women who married for money would be shopping in Paris right now, not standing on a rock at dawn. Autumn's heart skipped. Did he know about her arrangement with Harrison? But Xavier was smiling. That's why I knew you were different. You never once asked about the Caldwell fortune or tried to impress my father. If only he knew how carefully she had cultivated that impression during the lightning-fast courtship that led to their marriage. There's more to life than money, she said, the irony of her statement not lost on her. Tell that to my father. Xavier took her hand as they walked back toward the helicopter. He measures everything in dollars and cents, even relationships. That evening, back in their suite at a luxury resort in Sedona, Autumn slipped away to make a private call while Xavier showered. She hadn't made much progress accessing Harrison's confidential business records. Between the whirlwind adventures and her growing confusion about Xavier, her investigation had stalled. How's the honeymoon? Her old college roommate Lindsay asked when she answered. It's not a honeymoon, I don't even know what to call it. Autumn lowered her voice. Lindsay, I'm in trouble. Did he find out who you really are? No, worse. I think I might actually like him. The son? Isn't that the point? Getting close to get to the father. Autumn rubbed her temples. It's more complicated than that. Xavier is nothing like his father. He's kind and thoughtful and dying, Lindsay finished bluntly. Don't forget why you're doing this, Autumn. That family destroyed your father. Your mother is in a care facility because of them. I know, but no buts. Get what you came for. Harrison Caldwell ruined dozens of lives with his business practices. Your father was just one casualty. After hanging up, Autumn sat on the balcony watching the red rocks fade to purple in the twilight. Lindsay was right. She couldn't afford to develop real feelings for Xavier. This marriage was a means to justice for her father. But as Xavier joined her on the balcony, his hair damp from the shower, she felt the familiar tug of something that was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Ready for dinner? He asked. The concierge recommended a place with authentic Navajo cuisine. Actually, can we stay in tonight? I'm still processing that sunrise. Xavier studied her face. Everything okay? Just tired. It's been a busy month. His expression shifted to concern. I've been pushing too hard, haven't I? Trying to cram a lifetime into a few weeks. No, it's not that. It is, he interrupted gently. I've been selfish. This living list is about my needs, not yours. He sat beside her, closer than necessary. Autumn fought the urge to lean into him. What would you like to do tomorrow? He asked. Anything you want. She should suggest returning to Boston. The longer they stayed away, the less access she had to Harrison's files. But instead she said, tell me something real about yourself. Something not on any medical chart or society page. Xavier leaned back, surprised. Then he nodded thoughtfully. When I was 14, I almost died, had a cardiac event during a school field trip. While I was in the hospital recovering, I made a decision. If I couldn't live a normal life, I'd make whatever life I had count for something. He reached for a folder he kept in his travel bag and handed it to her. Inside were financial documents for something called Project Heartbeat. I took my trust fund, the one thing my father couldn't control, and created this. It's a foundation that provides cardiac care for children whose families can't afford it. Autumn flipped through the papers. The foundation operated anonymously, with no connection to the Caldwell name. Why keep it secret? This is incredible work. If my father knew, he'd turn it into a tax write-off and a PR opportunity. Xavier's expression hardened momentarily. Some things shouldn't be about business advantage. Autumn continued examining the documents. The foundation had helped over 200 children in the past decade. Its medical board included several doctors she respected from her research days. Everything about it was legitimate and impressively effective. This is who you really are, she said softly. It's who I try to be. Xavier took back the folder. Your turn. Tell me something real. Autumn froze. Everything she'd told him so far was carefully curated half-truths. I'm afraid of deep water, she said finally. It wasn't significant, but at least it was honest. Really? Even pools. She nodded. My cousin held me underwater too long when I was little. I've never gotten over it. Then I promised no deep water adventures. Xavier hesitated, then added, unless you want to overcome it. Sometimes facing fears with someone you trust makes them less powerful. Someone you trust. The word stung. Xavier trusted her completely, while she was actively betraying that trust. Later that night, as Xavier slept beside her, Autumn stared at the ceiling. The Project Heartbeat documents revealed a side of Xavier she hadn't anticipated, a genuine compassion that operated independently of his father's influence. How could the son of Harrison Caldwell be so different from his father? And if Xavier could forge his own path away from his father's shadow, what did that mean for her plan? For the first time since agreeing to Harrison's arrangement, Autumn questioned her purpose. Destroying Harrison might inadvertently destroy the good that Xavier was doing through his foundation. The collateral damage would extend beyond just the Caldwell family. She turned to look at Xavier's sleeping profile. His breathing was labored tonight, a reminder of his condition. A reminder that regardless of her conflicted feelings, their time together had an expiration date. Perhaps that was the cruelest part of all. Just as she was discovering who Xavier truly was, just as her heart was betraying her plans for revenge, the clock was ticking down on his life. Autumn closed her eyes, but sleep remained elusive. She had come into this marriage seeking justice. Now she wasn't sure what she was seeking, or what she would do if she found it. The Caldwell Foundation's annual gala transformed the Boston Museum of Fine Arts into a showcase of wealth and influence. Under the soaring glass ceiling of the central court, Boston's elite mingled among priceless sculptures, their conversations a soft hum beneath classical music. Autumn stood near a Roman bust, champagne flute untouched in her hand. After 2 months of marriage and adventures with Xavier, returning to Boston felt surreal. The city hadn't changed, but she had. Across the room, Xavier chatted with the hospital's chief of cardiology. Despite his obvious fatigue, he commanded attention in his custom tuxedo. They had been back in Boston for only 3 days, and already the medical appointments had resumed, a harsh reminder of reality after their escape. He looks well, Harrison Caldwell said, appearing at her side. The time away suited him. Autumn maintained her composure. It was good for both of us. Indeed. Marriage agrees with you. Harrison's smile didn't reach his eyes. Though I expected you to make more use of your access to the foundation during your time here. We've been rather busy living. Autumn replied carefully. Of course. Harrison sipped his scotch. Though your research background was a significant factor in your selection, Camille believed your expertise would benefit Xavier's condition. Selection. The word hung between them, a reminder of the arranged nature of their relationship. I'm still familiarizing myself with his medical history, she lied. Perhaps you should accelerate that process. Harrison's tone hardened slightly. Time isn't a luxury my son possesses. Before Autumn could respond, Camille approached with determined strides. Harrison, Congressman Walters needs a moment. She tilted her head meaningfully. Harrison nodded. We'll continue this discussion later. As he walked away, Autumn caught Camille studying her with unusual intensity. The Taiwanese delegation is arriving soon, Camille said. Harrison will want Xavier present for introductions. He's already tired, Autumn protested. The doctor said to limit exertion. The doctor doesn't understand the obligations that come with the Caldwell name. Camille's voice softened slightly. But you're learning, aren't you? Something in her tone raised Autumn's suspicions. She excused herself and headed toward Xavier, eager to create distance from Camille's scrutiny. Ready to escape? Xavier asked when she reached him. We just arrived, and I've already endured 3 conversations about investment opportunities and 2 about tax shelters. He took her hand. Let's find somewhere quiet. They slipped away to the museum's Japanese garden. In the hushed courtyard, Xavier's breathing eased. He sat on a stone bench beside a small pond where koi fish drifted like living brushstrokes. Sometimes I think my heart condition is psychosomatic, he said. It always improves when I'm away from my father's world. Autumn touched his wrist, discreetly checking his pulse. Your heart condition is very real. I know, but the stress doesn't help. Xavier looked at her with sudden intensity. Thank you for these past months. They've been the most alive I've ever felt. The sincerity in his voice pierced her defenses. She leaned forward and kissed him, no longer certain if she was playing a role or following her heart. Mr. and Mrs. Caldwell? A server stood at the garden entrance. Mr. Caldwell Sr. requests your presence in the main hall. Xavier sighed. Duty calls. Back in the gala, Harrison introduced them to various business associates. Xavier performed his role flawlessly, though Autumn noticed his increasing pallor. When he excused himself briefly, she turned to follow. A moment, Mrs. Caldwell. Camille blocked her path, steering her toward a quiet alcove. What is it? Xavier needs me. I think it's time we spoke honestly. Camille slid a tablet from her clutch. About who you really are. Autumn's stomach dropped. On the screen was her father's obituary, the real one that listed her as Autumn Sinclair, not Reynolds. How long have you known? She asked, voice steady despite her racing heart. From the beginning. Camille's expression remained neutral. Did you really think I wouldn't thoroughly investigate anyone getting close to Xavier? Then why let it proceed? Initially, I was curious to see what the daughter of Nathan Sinclair wanted with the Caldwells. Camille swiped to another document. Your background was ideal, medical research, understanding of cardiac conditions, no messy romantic entanglements. Your motivation was concerning, but potentially useful. Useful. Autumn felt cold wash over her. Harrison was willing to pay millions for someone to marry Xavier. You were willing to do it for revenge. The arrangement seemed economically efficient. Autumn fought to maintain composure as guests drifted nearby. Does Xavier know? No, but Harrison does, as of this morning. The revelation hit, like physical blow. He knows who I am. He knows your father was Nathan Sinclair. He doesn't yet know that your marriage to his son is part of a vendetta. Autumn glanced toward the main hall, searching for Xavier. I need to find him. Before you do, Camille said, blocking her path again. You should know your investigation into Harrison's business practices hasn't gone unnoticed. The files you've been accessing from Xavier's home office are monitored. Those files are only the beginning, Autumn countered. I know what Harrison did to my father, how he manipulated stock prices and planted false stories to destroy him. Do you? Camille's eyebrow arched. Or do you only know what your father told you? Before Autumn could respond, commotion erupted across the hall. Xavier stood face to face with his father, their heated exchange drawing attention despite their lowered voices. With a final sharp comment, Xavier turned away from Harrison and scanned the crowd, his eyes finding Autumn's. His expression stopped her cold. It wasn't anger or confusion, but understanding. Somehow he knew. Xavier started toward her, but Harrison caught his arm. Xavier wrenched free, his movement too sudden. He staggered, one hand flying to his chest. Autumn was moving before conscious thought, medical training taking over. She reached Xavier as his knees buckled, easing him to the floor as whispers rippled through the stunned crowd. Call an ambulance, she ordered, fingers finding his carotid pulse. Rapid, irregular. Xavier's eyes, clouded with pain, fixed on hers. You lied, he whispered. Not about everything, she answered, her professional mask cracking. Please, Xavier, stay with me. His breathing grew labored. Security cleared space as Autumn loosened his tie and positioned him properly. The minutes until paramedics arrived stretched eternally. In the ambulance, oxygen mask and ECG leads attached, Xavier drifted in and out of consciousness. Autumn held his hand, medical terminology washing over her as the paramedics radioed ahead to Mass General. BP dropping, one announced. Pulse becoming more irregular. Autumn leaned close to Xavier's ear. I'll explain everything, I promise. Just stay with me. His eyes fluttered open briefly. I already know, he whispered beneath the oxygen mask. Found your research last week. The admission stunned her. You knew? Why didn't you say anything? Wanted to understand why. His eyes closed again as the ambulance swerved through traffic. At the hospital, he was rushed to cardiac care, leaving Autumn in the waiting area. Minutes later, Harrison and Camille arrived, both still in formal attire. What happened? Harrison demanded. Stress-induced arrhythmia, possibly leading to heart failure, she replied clinically. They're stabilizing him now. Harrison stared at her, naked hatred replacing his usual controlled demeanor. This is your doing. My doing? You're the one who pressured him at the gala. I told him the truth about you, Harrison snarled. That the woman he loves is Nathan Sinclair's daughter, here to destroy our family. Autumn felt the stares of nearby waiting room occupants. Not here. Camille intervened. Harrison, The private family room is ready. In the isolated room, Harrison rounded on Autumn again. You manipulated your way into my son's life for revenge. And you bought him a wife like she was a commodity, Autumn countered. Which is worse? I did it for his happiness. You did it to control him, like you control everything. Autumn stood her ground. And now he knows about both our deceptions. Harrison's face paled. What are you talking about? Xavier found my research last week. He knows who I am and why I came into his life. She swallowed hard. And he knows about your arrangement with me. The revelation silenced Harrison momentarily. Camille stepped forward. What matters now is Xavier's health, she said firmly. Everything else is secondary. A doctor entered before either could respond. His grave expression sent ice through Autumn's veins. Mr. Caldwell is stabilized but critical, he explained. The arrhythmia caused significant damage. Without intervention, his heart function will continue to decline rapidly. What intervention? Harrison asked. He's already on the transplant list. At this point, conventional treatments won't be sufficient. The doctor glanced at his tablet. His condition has accelerated beyond our projections. Autumn understood the unspoken message. How long? The doctor met her gaze directly. Weeks, possibly a month. Not the year we had hoped for. Harrison sank into a chair. The titan of industry suddenly diminished. Autumn stood motionless, medical knowledge and emotional reality colliding devastatingly. Can I see him? She asked finally. The doctor nodded. Briefly. He's sedated but conscious. In the ICU, machines monitored every aspect of Xavier's fragile heartbeat. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable beneath the hospital gown and blankets. His eyes opened as she approached, recognition followed by something complex. Not hatred, but not forgiveness either. I'm sorry, she whispered, taking his hand. For everything. Xavier's voice was weak but clear. Did you ever feel anything real for me? The question stripped away all pretense. Standing in the harsh hospital lights, Autumn confronted the truth she'd been avoiding for weeks. Yes, she admitted. That's why this hurts so much. His fingers tightened slightly around hers. Not acceptance, not rejection, just acknowledgement. I need time, he said finally, to process everything. Time. The one thing they suddenly had much less of than they'd thought. Autumn hadn't left Mass General in 3 days. She slept in short bursts on the vinyl couch in Xavier's private room, washing up in the adjoining bathroom. Her medical background granted her unusual access, though the staff's sideways glances suggested they knew something was fractured between patient and wife. Xavier's condition had stabilized, but precariously. Each day, his ejection fraction numbers worsened. The percentage of blood his heart could pump with each contraction dropping dangerously low. He spoke little, and never about the revelations at the gala. The silence between them felt like a physical presence, heavy and unyielding. On the 4th morning, Autumn woke to find Xavier watching her from his bed. You should go home, he said. Get actual sleep. I'm fine here. Taking care of me out of obligation or guilt isn't the same as love. The blunt assessment stung because it contained truth. Autumn straightened, choosing honesty over comfort. I started this relationship under false pretenses, she admitted. But somewhere between our wedding and now, it became real for me. That's why I stopped looking for evidence against your father weeks ago. Xavier's eyes studied her face. But you never told me who you really were. I was afraid. Not just of losing access to your father's records, but of losing you. A nurse entered before Xavier could respond, checking vitals and administering medication. When they were alone again, Xavier changed the subject. My father wants to transfer me to Johns Hopkins, he said. They have an experimental LVAD program. Left ventricular assist devices were stopgap measures, not solutions. Autumn knew the statistics. That might buy time, but time for what? Xavier interrupted, a rare edge in his voice. For a heart that's never coming? I'm blood type O with antibody complications. You know how many compatible donors exist for my profile. There are other approaches, she insisted. Research is advancing constantly. Xavier closed his eyes. I'm tired of being a medical project. That evening, alone in the hospital cafeteria, Autumn stared into cooling coffee. Her phone contained missed calls from her mother's care facility, but she couldn't summon energy to return them. Mind if I join you? Autumn looked up to find Dr. Lenore Chun, an old colleague from her research days. Before she could respond, Lenore set down her tray and sat. I heard about your husband's situation, Lenore said. I'm consulting on his case. Then you know it's dire. Lenore nodded, glancing around before lowering her voice. That's actually why I wanted to talk to you. Do you remember Dr. Emil Bergstrom from our gene therapy project? Of course. He left for Zurich when funding dried up. He continued the research we started. Lenore slid a tablet across the table. His team has developed a treatment combining stem cell therapy with targeted genetic reprogramming for cases exactly like Xavier's. Autumn scanned the data, her pulse quickening. The approach was revolutionary, harvesting cardiac stem cells, genetically modifying them to enhance regenerative capacity, then reintroducing them to damaged heart tissue. This can't be FDA approved, she said. It's not. It's in clinical trials in Switzerland. Lenore tapped the screen. Early results show 30% efficacy in terminal cases like Xavier's. 30% isn't great odds. Better than zero, which is what conventional approaches offer him now. Autumn continued reading. The cost is astronomical. $15 million for treatment, not covered by any insurance, Lenore confirmed. But that's pocket change for the Caldwells, isn't it? Later that night, Autumn shared the information with Xavier. He listened without interruption, his expression unreadable. Genetic reprogramming, he said finally. Sounds like science fiction. It's cutting edge, but the science is sound. I worked on early versions of this approach before. She stopped herself. Before my father ruined yours, Xavier finished. You can say it. Autumn nodded. Bergstrom was my mentor. If he believes in this treatment, it's legitimate. Xavier stared at the ceiling. 30% chance of significant improvement. 70% chance of putting my family through false hope and painful decline anyway. You faced worse odds. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. True. The next morning, Harrison arrived as Autumn was explaining the treatment to Xavier's cardiologist. Hearing her outline the Swiss option, Harrison immediately dismissed it. Experimental treatments in foreign countries? Absolutely not. He turned to the cardiologist. Prepare transfer papers for Johns Hopkins. It's not your decision, Xavier said quietly. It's mine. You're not thinking clearly. This woman has ulterior motives. This woman is still my wife, Xavier countered. And she found a treatment you and your army of specialists couldn't. Harrison's jaw tightened. The treatment costs a fortune with minimal chance of success. Since when has money been an object for you? Xavier turned to the cardiologist. I want a full workup to determine if I'm eligible for the Bergstrom protocol. When the doctors left, Harrison approached Autumn. A word in private. In the hallway, his demeanor changed from concerned father to ruthless businessman. Name your price, he said flatly. Excuse me. For walking away. Divorce Xavier, disappear. Let him spend his remaining time with family instead of a woman who married him for revenge. Autumn felt cold fury rising. You think I'd abandon him now? I think everyone has a price. Nathan Sinclair's daughter included. The mention of her father triggered something unexpected. Not anger, but clarity. You're right, she said. I do have a price. Harrison nodded, unsurprised. Name it. Fund Xavier's treatment in Switzerland. Cover all costs, including ongoing care afterward if it succeeds. Harrison's eyes narrowed. And the evidence I collected about your business practices, the material that would interest the SEC and Justice Department, stays buried. You're blackmailing me to save my own son? I'm offering a trade. Your legal security for Xavier's chance at life. Autumn met his gaze steadily. You once paid millions for someone to make your son happy. Consider this a similar investment. Harrison studied her with new calculation. You genuinely care for him, more than you could understand. After a long moment, Harrison extended his hand. We have a deal. 3 days later, a private medical jet departed for Zurich, carrying Xavier, Autumn, and the fragile seed of hope neither fully believed in, but neither could bear to abandon. Zurich in late autumn resembled a postcard, with Lake Zurich reflecting mountain silhouettes and centuries-old buildings standing sentinel along perfectly maintained streets. None of this beauty registered with Autumn as she paced the private waiting area of Bergstrom Cardiac Institute, a sleek facility nestled discreetly in the city's medical district. Hour 4 of Xavier's procedure. The modified stem cells had been harvested 2 days prior, genetically altered overnight, and were now being reintroduced through a specialized catheter navigating his damaged heart tissue. A soft chime announced someone entering the waiting area. Autumn looked up, expecting Dr. Bergstrom's assistant with another update. Instead, Harrison Caldwell stood in the doorway, looking haggard despite his immaculate suit. "You came," she said, genuinely surprised. Harrison moved to the window, surveying the city below. "Contrary to what you believe, I do care about my son. You have an unusual way of showing it," says the woman who married him under false pretenses. They lapsed into silence, mutual accusations exhausted days ago. Harrison had arranged everything from Switzerland, the medical flight, the accommodations, the expedited treatment approval, but had remained in Boston. Until now. "Why are you really here?" Autumn asked. Harrison turned from the window. "Dr. Bergstrom called me directly. The procedure is more complex than anticipated. He wanted family present for potential decisions." Fresh fear twisted through Autumn. "What decisions?" "They said the risks were minimal. The risks of the procedure itself are minimal. The potential complications afterward are not." Harrison sat across from her. Xavier's body could reject the modified cells. Autumn understood the implication. Organ rejection protocols involve powerful immunosuppressants that would further compromise Xavier's already weakened system. A cruel trade-off. Save the heart at the expense of everything else. They should have explained that before. They did explain it. To Xavier. Harrison's expression softened slightly. "He chose not to worry you with worst-case scenarios." The revelation stung. Even now, even after everything, Xavier was protecting her. A doctor entered, but not Bergstrom. Dr. Keller, his head of immunology, nodded gravely at them both. "The initial procedure is complete," she explained in precise English. "The modified stem cells have been introduced successfully. Now we monitor for integration and regeneration or rejection." "When will we know?" Autumn asked. "The next 48 hours are critical. Mr. Caldwell will remain sedated but monitored continuously." After Dr. Keller left, an uncomfortable silence settled between Autumn and Harrison. Minutes stretched into an hour, neither speaking. Finally, Harrison broke the stalemate. "Camille has been investigating your claims about my business practices and their connection to your father." Autumn tensed. "I thought we had an agreement." "We do. But I needed to understand what exactly I'm protecting myself against." Harrison met her gaze directly. "What do you know about Prometheus Ventures? Your shell company that shorted my father's investment firm stocks while spreading false fraud allegations. Is that what Nathan told you?" "I have the documentation," Autumn countered. "Emails, wire transfers, planted news stories." Harrison nodded slowly. "You have pieces of a larger story. Did your father ever mention his role in the Parker Foundation?" The name sounded vaguely familiar. "Some sort of children's charity?" "Pediatric cancer research," Harrison corrected. "I served on the board." "So did your father, who managed their endowment fund. What does this have to do with?" In 2019, the foundation discovered irregularities in their accounts. Millions earmarked for research diverted into offshore holdings. Harrison pulled out his phone, bringing up documents. "Your father's offshore holdings." Autumn stared at the evidence. Bank transfers, account numbers, timestamps matching withdrawals from the foundation. Her father's signature authorizing everything. "This is forged," she whispered, but uncertainty crept into her voice. "Nathan and I were friends once," Harrison continued. "When the board discovered his embezzlement, I offered him a way out. Resign quietly, return the money, avoid prosecution. He refused. So you destroyed him instead?" "I protected the foundation from scandal that would have devastated their fundraising." Harrison put away his phone. "The short positions against his firm? Standard procedure when a company faces potential criminal indictment. The news stories? Not planted, just inevitable when financial journalists started investigating." Autumn shook her head. "My father wasn't a thief. Everyone has blind spots about those they love," Harrison said quietly. Before she could respond, Camille arrived, carrying coffee in a small overnight bag. She nodded curtly at Autumn before turning to Harrison. "I've arranged hotel rooms nearby," she told him. "The doctors suggest we take shifts." The practical suggestion broke the tension. They established a rotation. Harrison would stay first, followed by Camille, giving Autumn a chance to shower and change at the hotel. In her room overlooking the lake, Autumn stood under scalding water, trying to wash away Harrison's revelations. Could her father truly have stolen from a children's charity? The man who taught her integrity above all else? She wrapped herself in a hotel robe, and opened her laptop. Using skills honed during her investigation of Harrison, she began researching the Parker Foundation, cross-referencing dates and events with her father's financial troubles. 3 hours later, she sat back, numb with discovery. The timeline matched Harrison's claims. The foundation had indeed reported financial irregularities the same month her father's troubles began. News articles from that period mentioned an internal investigation, though no names were published. Her phone rang. Camille, requesting her return to the hospital. Xavier's condition had changed. Racing back to the clinic, Autumn found medical staff in controlled urgency around Xavier's room. Dr. Bergstrom himself met her at the door. His body is showing signs of rejecting the modified cells, he explained. We've started immunosuppressant therapy, but his fever is concerning. Through the window, Autumn could see Xavier, pale and connected to even more machines than before. Harrison stood at his bedside, speaking softly to his unconscious son. What are his chances? She asked. If we can control the rejection response, still good, Bergstrom replied. But the next 24 hours will tell us everything. Autumn joined Harrison at Xavier's bedside. Despite their animosity, they were united in this vigil. I'll get coffee, Harrison said after a while, leaving them alone. In the quiet beeping of monitors, Autumn took Xavier's hand. I don't know if you can hear me, but I need to tell you something. I started investigating your father believing he destroyed mine. Now I'm not sure what to believe anymore. She brushed hair from his fevered forehead. But I'm sure about one thing. Whatever brought us together, lies, manipulation, arrangements, what grew between us is real. At least for me. Xavier's monitors beeped steadily, offering no response. Outside in the hallway, she glimpsed Harrison speaking with Camille, their conversation appearing heated despite lowered voices. Autumn moved closer to the door, catching fragments. Cannot tell him, Harrison was saying. He deserves to know the whole truth, Camille countered. Not now? Not when he's fighting for his life. And if he survives? Will you tell him then? Harrison's response was lost as a nurse entered Xavier's room, but Autumn's suspicions were aroused. What truth was Harrison still hiding? That evening, with Xavier's condition unchanged, Autumn found Camille alone in the clinic's small cafeteria. What truth is Harrison hiding from Xavier? She asked without preamble. Camille looked unsurprised by the direct approach. I wondered if you overheard us. Is it about my father? About me? No, Camille replied. It's much older than that. It concerns Xavier's mother. Autumn knew little about Catherine Caldwell beyond the basics. Socialite, philanthropist, died from cancer when Xavier was 12. What about her? Camille hesitated, loyalty to Harrison warring with some other emotion. It's not my place. If it affects Xavier, it concerns me. After a long moment, Camille nodded. Catherine's cancer was diagnosed shortly after Xavier's heart condition was discovered. She was offered experimental treatment that might have saved her, but it would have meant leaving Xavier during critical surgeries. She chose to stay with her son instead of pursuing treatment, Autumn guessed. Yes, Harrison never forgave himself for not convincing her otherwise. Camille's voice softened. His drive to save Xavier isn't just about a father's love. It's his attempt to redeem his failure to save Catherine. The revelation reframed Harrison's desperate measures, the arranged marriage, the millions spent on treatments, even his ruthless protection of the family name. Behind the billionaire's calculated exterior was a man haunted by loss. 2 days later, Xavier's fever broke. Cellular rejection indicators began trending downward. Dr. Bergstrom cautiously upgraded his prognosis. Autumn was dozing in the bedside chair when she felt fingers weakly squeeze hers. She opened her eyes to find Xavier awake, gaze clearer than it had been in weeks. Hey, he whispered hoarsely. Hey yourself. She blinked back unexpected tears. How do you feel? Like I survived something. His eyes held questions. Did it work? It's still too early to know for sure, but the initial signs are positive. She poured water, helping him sip through a straw. Your father's here. In Zurich. Xavier nodded slightly. I heard his voice. And yours. Coming and going. Autumn froze. How much did you hear? Enough. Xavier's gaze was direct despite his weakness. About your father. About my mother. A nurse entered before Autumn could respond, checking vitals and adjusting medication. When they were alone again, Xavier continued as if there had been no interruption. I need time to process everything, he said quietly. Not just what happened at the gala, but all of it. Who I am. Who we are together. I understand, she said, though the words felt inadequate. Xavier's eyes drifted closed, medication pulling him back toward sleep. I'm leaving as soon as I'm stabilized, he murmured. Not running away. Just finding perspective. Where will you go? Autumn asked, but Xavier had already slipped into unconsciousness, leaving her question hanging in the sterile hospital air. 6 months passed. Autumn's life settled into a rhythm she never imagined. Overseeing the renovation of a community center in her father's old neighborhood in Brighton, funded by an anonymous donor she knew was Harrison Caldwell. The building would house a free cardiac clinic for underserved children, merging Xavier's passion project with her medical expertise. She lived alone in a modest apartment, no longer the pretend wife of a billionaire's son. The divorce papers remained unsigned, gathering dust in her desk drawer. Neither she nor Xavier seemed ready to make their separation permanent. Xavier had disappeared from the hospital in Zurich just as he'd promised, leaving only a brief note for his father and Autumn. Dr. Bergstrom confirmed he was stable enough for travel, but advised against it. Xavier went anyway. Weekly medical reports forwarded to Bergstrom from various locations tracked his recovery: Barcelona, Kyoto, Cape Town, Auckland. The treatment was working. Gradually, his heart function improved. The reports contained no personal messages, just clinical data proving he was alive and healing. Harrison, surprisingly, maintained contact with Autumn. Their shared concern for Xavier created an uneasy alliance. He provided funding for the community center without public recognition, and she kept his business secrets, their arrangement evolving from blackmail to something approaching mutual respect. On a crisp October afternoon, Autumn received a cream-colored envelope at the construction site. Inside was an invitation to a photography exhibition at a small gallery in Soho, featuring an artist named X.C. Wells. Her heart recognized the initials before her mind fully processed them. The gallery was intimate, walls adorned with stark black and white photographs documenting moments of human resilience across continents. A woman in a Jakarta slum planting flowers in discarded plastic bottles. Children playing soccer in a Damascus street lined with bombed buildings. An elderly man teaching a teenage boy to fish along a polluted riverbank. Each image captured the same essence: life asserting itself despite circumstances designed to extinguish it. What do you think? The voice behind her was familiar, yet somehow new. Stronger, steadier. Autumn turned to find Xavier watching her, camera hanging around his neck. He looked transformed. The sickly pallor replaced by sun-kissed skin, frail frame filled out by lean muscle. His eyes held the same intelligence, but with newfound clarity. "They're beautiful," she said, fighting the urge to touch him, to verify he was real. "When did you become a photographer?" "Somewhere between Thailand and Peru." He smiled, the gesture reaching his eyes in a way she'd rarely seen before. "I needed to capture what I was seeing, what I was feeling." They moved through the gallery, maintaining careful distance while discussing his travels. Xavier explained how photography became his therapy, a way to process everything: his illness, their deceptions, his family legacy. "And your health?" she finally asked. "Better than anyone expected. Bergstrom calls me his miracle case." Xavier touched his chest unconsciously. 70% heart function now. Nearly normal. "I got the reports," Autumn admitted. "But they didn't say where you were or if you were coming back. I wasn't sure myself until recently." Xavier gestured toward the photographs. "I needed to see the world without the shadow of death hanging over me, without my father's expectations or the Caldwell name defining me." They reached the final photograph: sunrise over Machu Picchu, golden light illuminating ancient stones, and a single figure with arms outstretched toward the sky. "This was the moment I decided to come home," Xavier said quietly. "I realized I'd been running from pain instead of moving toward healing." Autumn studied the image, understanding its significance. "And have you?" "Healed. Not completely, but I'm ready to try." He met her gaze directly. "I visited my mother's grave in Connecticut last week, and I had lunch with my father yesterday." Surprise crossed her face. "How did that go?" "Surprisingly well. He's different. Less controlling." Xavier smiled faintly. "He's funding a documentary series I want to make about children with heart conditions around the world." That doesn't sound like Harrison Caldwell. Near-death experiences change people, not just for the person dying. Xavier glanced around to ensure they were alone. He told me everything. About my mother's choice, about your father's situation. No more secrets. Autumn tensed. And I understand now why you did what you did. His voice softened. I've spent months angry about being manipulated, only to realize I was equally guilty. I used our marriage as an escape, as my final adventure before dying. A gallery assistant approached, informing Xavier that a potential buyer wanted to discuss his work. He excused himself, asking Autumn to wait. Alone among the photographs, she confronted her conflicted emotions. The man she'd married for revenge had become the man she missed waking up beside. The deception that brought them together had evolved into something neither could have anticipated. Later, on the gallery's rooftop terrace overlooking Manhattan at twilight, they stood side by side watching lights flicker to life across the city. I remember our night in Arizona, Xavier said, counting stars in the desert. You told me there were more stars than people had counted, Autumn replied. But someone had to try anyway. That's what these photographs are, my attempt to count stars. He turned to face her. I'm not dying anymore, Autumn. For the first time, I'm planning a future instead of an ending. What does that future look like? Unwritten. Xavier reached for her hand, cautious but deliberate. But I'd like you in it, if you want to be. Not as part of some arrangement. Not as atonement for the past. Just as us, whatever that means now. Autumn looked at their joined hands, then up at him. We barely know each other. The real versions of us. Then let's start over. He smiled. Xavier Caldwell. Photographer. Former dying man. Currently figuring out what it means to live. Despite everything, Autumn found herself smiling back. Autumn Sinclair. Doctor. Former vengeful daughter. Currently renovating more than just a building. Above them, stars emerged one by one against the darkening sky. Neither mentioned the divorce papers or made grand declarations. There would be time for those conversations later. For now, it was enough to stand together on the rooftop, two people who had found each other under impossible circumstances, watching night fall over a city full of second chances. To new beginnings, Xavier said softly. Autumn squeezed his hand. To living, however long we have.